beyond your name, beyond the roles you play, your status, your achievements, your roles in other people's lives or relationships or fears. So that is exactly what we are going to touch upon today. So we spend our lives constructing an identity which is shaped by our upbringing, by our childhood, by the way we understand our surroundings since childhood, the society, inner child emotional wounds that we discussed last week, and also past experiences. So today we are going to embark on this journey of this discussing about this mask called as the ego in a little more detailed way, and what authentic self is and how we can get closer to that authentic self. So as I began with a question, who am I when I remove all these titles, labels, my roles, my status, my job, my position in the society, or my past experiences? What is it that remains beyond all of these? So the term ego is often misunderstood. Like some of us, when we hear the term ego, we think of it as pride or arrogance or too much of self respect or something that is negative, which is an enemy to be destroyed. While some of them see ego as a necessary driver for success, like you need to have a certain level of ego to become successful. But the truth is, ego is neither good nor bad. It is simply a construct, a mental construct that is created by our thoughts, beliefs about who we are, and all the thought patterns, emotional reactions that we've been learning since the beginning of this series are nothing but they are formed from this mental construct called as the ego. So all those thought patterns, that repeated emotional uh, dialogues that you have in your mind, all the all the unnecessary beliefs that we have and the way we operate on those beliefs, all those are coming from this root cause called as the ego, which is nothing but a sense of identity or I, something that we call or identify as I. How am I separate from the world? How am I separate from the others around me? This creates a sense of identity, which is nothing but the ego. So, why should we understand this concept of ego? Because ego is, it actually forms the fundamental central role in human suffering. So, without understanding ego, it is impossible to transcend human suffering. And ego has been researched and it's been around even scientifically, psychologically. The term ego is identified as, is often claimed as self identity, as I said, which is shaped by our experiences, conditioning, societal conditioning, and survival mechanisms since childhood. As we spoke during our last week's session on understanding inner child wounds, those inner child wounds we carry often shape our ego's responses. They often shape, they're the like the driving mechanism for shaping up our ego on how we view ourselves, how we created that identity of ourselves in this world. At the same time, how we view others or our worldview in general, how we view the world in general. So all these come from that inner child wound, and that helps shape this ego aspect. And with that, the ego helps us create some coping mechanism, all those behavioral patterns, the thought patterns that we learned about, uh, that keeps us trapped in this ego self, which cuts us out from the authentic self, that our true self or higher self or the soul, in number of terms, but the meaning is the same. So scientifically, psychologically, ego is self-identity. But what does it mean spiritually? Spiritually, they say ego is a false sense of self. It's a false self. It's a collection of thoughts and attachments that cover the true essence of who we are. That is often spoken about in all our sacred texts and in any good book, any scriptures that you read, the reference that they have to as soul is our essence of who we are. But the ego is a false sense of that self, which is just a collection of all these thoughts and beliefs that have been developed due to conditioning. So today's session is about unmasking that ego, but not destroying it. Because based on my understanding, my research, and my inner knowing and wisdom, I do not judge or label ego as good and bad, because just understanding it and keeping that ego in check is essential to progress spiritually and also personally, to reach your full potential, and also to understand your true essence of who you are beyond all these labels and roles we play in a society or in the world, in the physical world. So there is a certain anatomy of ego. We'll just touch upon this from two perspectives again. From the science perspective, of psychological perspective, uh, the anatomy of ego based on Sigmund Freud's ego theory. Ego is a mediator between our unconscious desires and the external world. So there are three parts or three segments of the ego as part of this theory. The first one is ID, which is just a primitive desires or instincts, the inner child's raw emotions. And this ID gives rise to superego, something that theory calls superego, which is internalized rules of the society, the conditioning, like understanding what is right or wrong, what is good, what is bad, segregating things or situations or people into good, bad, right, wrong, acceptable, unacceptable, society rules, right? We live in a society, there are certain rules that we need to abide by. So that is nothing but conditioning, some expectations, sticking to those expectations. So we are internalizing all those rules and creating an identity out of it, like creating a way that I need to operate, how a daughter-in-law should operate, how a daughter-in-law should be perceived, how a good daughter-in-law is perceived, how a not so good daughter-in-law is perceived, how a successful person is perceived, how someone is called not successful or unsuccessful, how a lady is called or labeled as beautiful, how someone is not viewed as beautiful. So all these are mental constructs, all these are conditioned beliefs that we internalize as part of the societal conditioning and operate through these set of rules, or black and white thinking is what we call the right, wrong, good, bad, judgmental form of, in a way. And then there is ego, which balances both the ID and the superego, trying to create a sense of self. That's what I've been trying to say. Like, it internalizes the rules from society, and using that primitive desires from the ID, we create this sense of self, of how we view ourselves in the world, and how we want the world to view us, and how we view the world. So all of these perspectives depend on that sense of identity or the ego that we develop. So breaking that down, that anatomy of ego, to a more simpler version, there are three primary layers, both from psychological, scientific, or spiritual standpoint. Three primary layers. The first one is the surface ego, the persona, the mask. For instance, I've been claiming or quoting my own examples since the beginning of this series, that I used to be a good student and I wanted the world to view me, Srujana, as someone who is academically good, who performs well, who is a good student, who gets good grades, who gets good marks. Uh, and that was the identity or persona that I wanted to maintain. I used to push myself to perform well. At the same time, I wanted the world to view me as that. So that was the mask that I wore. So this is a false identity that we present to the world. That if anything that goes, that comes in between this identity, if suppose if there is an instance of me failing an examination, or if somebody is noticing me as a failure, that would shake my world, that would trigger my world, that would like bring me down, collapse my life or world, was the feeling that I used to have, because that is a false identity. I wanted to present myself to the world in that way. So how was this formed? This was formed by societal conditioning, because as a child, I noticed that someone who is well educated was respected. That was my belief that I developed as growing up. Nobody told me that, but it was just my observation, my own observation of my own inner childhood. So I noticed that there are certain expectations from people, and I noticed that society accepts or favors someone who's successful. And to be successful, you need to be academically good, was a belief that I formed. So so this made me seek approval, right? This surface ego, that this persona that I have, I'm seeking approval from the world, that I want the world to view me a certain way. I'm seeking approval, and if they did not view me as successful or academically brilliant, my world was collapsing, which means I'm dependent. My whole identity and my existence is depending on my worth is depending on how I'm being viewed. So that, which means I'm seeking approval to feel valued, right? So that is surface ego. Next is the defensive ego, that is the shadow self. This is the protector. So ego, why we say ego is not good or bad, is this is where it comes into picture. Why ego is also good means it tries to protect us based on our past hurts or wounds as an inner child. All those inner child wounds that we talked about. Some for a child who has been facing rejection since as a tender child, who faced rejection for their instant skin color, big issue in India, right? Even till date, someone who is a wheatish complexion or a not fair complexion, they often experience rejection in some form. Even I faced a lot of rejection, being from a lot of body shaming growing up, and that formed a defensive ego, which says there is a fear of being rejected. There is a sense of failure. You feel that you're not valuable because you're being rejected. So someone, for example, as I said, someone who's been shamed as a child, they may hide their emotions to appear strong, because they don't want the world to know that I'm being bothered by, they cannot stand up for themselves, and they internalize that shame. And they feel that to appear strong to the world, they have to hide their emotions. That is one way of coping. Or the other way is they try to avoid people or situations who that they know can be judgmental. So in this way, the ego tries to protect, because the ego knows that people are going to judge you for your complexion or for your body or for your height or for your weight or whatever. So the person tries to internalize and listens to that ego voice, and hides themselves from attending many social events, for example. They don't want to attend a lot of social events because they know the kind of comments that they may hear, or they may come across, right? All these are defensive ego, the shadow self. And the third part is the core ego, that is the illusion of separation. This is the ultimate barrier which prevents us from experiencing true oneness or true spiritual awakening. So, this is the deepest level of ego which separates us from others, which separates us from love, from the universe, and from everything that surrounds us in this existence. So, this is the deepest and the most fundamental level of ego that almost all of us have. This creates comparison, competition, suffering, because the ego in this way, in this level, feels that I need to be unique. Unique is fine, but I need to be separate from others. I need to be either ahead, I need to be ahead or more, or I need to have more. Superiority complex or inferiority complex is also core ego. I am behind, I'm falling behind. People my age are running ahead with houses and cars and fancy vacations while I'm falling behind. This is an example of core ego. What does this lead to? This leads to competition. This leads to comparison, ultimately leading to suffering. So there is a feeling that you're not catching up, you're not or you're too high, that is my level, the superiority complex. You're feeling that you're superior to others just because you own something, or just because you have more degrees, or just because you're spiritual. Even that is ego, core ego. So that is a fundamental, like ultimate barrier which creates a difference between each other. So how is Srujana different from the rest of the world? That is the illusion of separation that I create. That is the ultimate barrier. That is the core ego. For example, I am alone in this world. No one truly understands me. Statements like these are coming from that core ego. And things like, I am from that community. I cannot mingle with lower community people. That is superiority complex. That is also core ego. I am a vegetarian, so I do not attend events where there is non-vegetarian. So that is again creating a separation, or viewing yourself as something different, or something superior to others. So having values is one thing, but giving uh, a meaning to those values, like upper, lower, that is definitely core ego. So Patriji always says having ego means you are either having superiority complex or inferiority complex, or you're oscillating in between. So anything in these two, between these two, is nothing but our core ego, that illusion of separation, that feeling of being superior just because I'm on a spiritual path, or the feeling of being superior just because I'm living abroad, or I'm having so and so, I'm owning so and so, just because I'm on my best timeline, whatever. Anything and everything that makes you feel that you're ahead of others, or at the same time anything and everything that makes you feel that you are behind or less than others, that makes you feel less valuable just because you don't have a job. You feel less valuable just because you don't own something. You feel less valuable just because your net worth is not matching something. All these are nothing but we attach our worth and value to something external, something outside of ourselves, that creates this illusion of separation. So the ego's ultimate fear is dissolution. It does not want to disappear. It does not want to release its grasp or grip. So because there is a fear in all of us that without any of this, we cannot exist, because that's how we've been grown up. We've been watching how the society operates, what kind of people get respect, what kind of people are adulated, what kind of people are thrown away or kept away from the society. All these are conditioning. All these conditioned beliefs make us understand or develop this identity, that if we do not have any of these labels or roles or sense of value, we cannot exist, because there is no intrinsic worth. We don't see value in ourselves without any of this. But in reality, nothing, not a single thing is required for us to feel valuable from the moment we are born till the moment we leave the physical body in a lifetime. Because all that thing, all those illusions that we are trapped in is nothing but an ego's game. And ego does not want us to dissolve or dissolve that grip. So when we dissolve ego's illusion, that's exactly when we experience what true liberation is, true freedom is, or true enlightenment is. So last session, we noticed the relationship between inner child wounds, right? So the inner child wounds and understanding, and how it forms a fundamental uh, core essence of our suffering. So I'm going to talk about the relationship between those inner child wounds and ego, right? So how are they connected? So we notice that, for example, the ego forms in childhood as a defense mechanism, as I said in one of the example. So a child who undergoes rejection based on their skin color, or because of their low performance in school, or low grades, or because of their body, because of their caste, community, number of reasons, because of their financial status, their family facing rejection. The child notices their family facing rejection due to the financial status. All this creates an ego belief, a belief, an ego identity, where they don't, sometimes the person becomes a people pleaser as an adult because they don't want to experience that rejection, that pain. They try to please people in a number of ways. They want to change their skin color. They want to change things about them so that they can please people, so that people can appreciate them, people can accept them. They want to feel fit in. They want to feel validated, right? Because their internal core worth or value, intrinsic value is not there. We are all seeking outside, external. And suppose a child who has undergone a childhood wound of failure, an inner child wound of failure, the ego creates perfectionist. For example, this is an example of myself. As I said, I used to have my worth attached to my performance. If I was going to fail or I had a thought of failing, I used to fear. There was a lot of fear. There was an ego threat. So my ego developed that I have to be perfect in whatever I do so that there is no failure. I'm trying to avoid failure. So there is a fear behind it. Perfectionism is nothing but the root cause is fear. We are afraid of something. We are afraid of failing. We are afraid of being viewed as something by the world. That is where perfectionism comes. And then there is abandonment. A child who has been abandoned, who has an inner child wound of abandonment, the ego tries to protect them. Anyway, people will leave you. Anyway, people will abandon you. So you be by yourself. Why take risk? Why go and mingle with people and form these connections? Because anyway, they're going to leave you. That is what the wound is telling. So the ego creates the lone wolf who likes to be alone. Most of the introverts, not every introvert, but most people who don't like to mingle much, they have a wound of abandonment. So the ego is not our true identity. As you've seen, it's just a construct that is being built from childhood through our experiences, through our fears, through our survival needs. So an example, a child who was criticized for being too emotional as a child, they may develop an ego identity that, okay, maybe if I express my emotions, people will see I am weak. My emotions are making me appear that I'm weak, but I want to be strong. So they create this protective mask, and they do stop expressing themselves. They are not very emotionally available. They hide their emotions. They cannot express. And what this does, we've seen in our past sessions, unable to express or inability to express emotions or embrace emotions creates blocks. Our chakras get blocked and ultimately leading to our physical diseases. Everything is so beautifully interconnected. This is just a protective mask that we are wearing because of a childhood wound. So the inner child experiences pain, gives the ego to build a shield to protect future pain. This is the defensive ego that we talked about. And this shield becomes a false identity, which is shaping our reactions, our behavior, our beliefs. We just believe that, okay, everybody is going to leave me because the child has the abandonment inner child wound. But is that the case? Is that the reality? Ego does not care. Ego lives in the past, or it lives in the future. It's never in the present. The moment you're thinking or getting thoughts or wounds from the past, it is an ego mind. Or you're having fear of the future, or how things will work out or not, about your health, about your children's settlement, about anything and everything of the future that does not exist in reality. It is also an ego play. These are all illusions. The present moment is the only reality, and ego does not like to be in the present. So it distracts us from the present moment by all these thoughts and beliefs. So it creates these narratives. We call this the ego stories. There is always an ego story running behind to justify that behavior. Anyway, I got hurt in the past. Why take risk? So we justify that behavior. Anyway, I'm going. If I fail, I cannot show my face to the world. So what is the point in even trying? Procrastination. The root cause of procrastination is fear of failure. There is a perfectionism aspect in procrastination. So there is always a root cause, and that root cause is fear, and it comes from the ego. More examples of inner child wounds and ego. Suppose a child experienced emotional neglect as a child. Their needs, emotional needs didn't get fulfilled. So their ego response becomes, okay, when you seek help, nobody is going to help you. So they become this independent overachiever. I don't need help. They have trouble seeking help. They have trouble asking others for help. As adults, we see many of us are like these. We want to do things by ourselves. We want to be independent, which is not bad, but solely being independent just for the sake of not asking help, or you want to prove something to someone through your success, all these are emotional wounds of neglect. So another wound is feeling unloved as a child. If the child had an inner child wound of not being lovable, their ego responses, they become overgivers. They always want to make everyone around them happy, assuming that if they make everyone around them happy, they will love them and they won't leave them. So they will become people pleasers, overgivers. They're always available. They outstep their boundaries. They don't have their personal boundaries. They do not protect their energy. They're always giving, giving, giving. Too much for they live for other people. They don't know what they want. They just live and work for other people's goals. That is a feeling of deep sense of lack of self-love, is an example of this. So the ego forms these illusions to keep us safe. It is trying to protect us. It's not that bad also. But these illusions are also keeping us trapped in inauthentic patterns. It is separating us from our authentic self, right? So now let's see what authentic self is. Today's session is about understanding ego. We've seen the anatomy of ego and how it is linked to inner child wounds. Now let's see what is authentic self. We've been using the term authentic self. So authentic self is our true essence, the part of us that exists beyond all this conditioning, beyond all these fears, and beyond these ego-driven identities, beyond all these labels. It's pure awareness, pure consciousness, pure love and presence. So unlike the ego, which is shaped by external influences and all these labels, the authentic self is who we are at our fundamental core. Who are we at our core? If you are alone in a room for the rest of your life, who are you? Who will you be? That is your authentic self. When nobody is watching, who are you? When you have no roles to play, who are you? When you have no people to interact, who are you? How will you operate in this world? Before fear and before societal expectations take over. That is what is authentic self. It is connected to intuition, joy, and truth. It does not care about what the world thinks. It does not care about how society perceives you. It does not care about how you want to be showing a certain way, how you want to be shown a certain way to the world. It does not seek validation. There is no control. There is no superiority. There is no inferiority because it knows its worth is inherent. Authentic self is very at peace, very at joy just by itself. It doesn't need anything external or anything, any validation or any form of control to feel valuable or worthy. So, how do we find this authentic self? First and foremost, this entire series is about this self-awareness journey is to become aware. Anything you want to heal, you have to first become aware. So if you want to get closer to your authentic self, first step is to get aware of your ego, is to observe the ego, is to notice when your thoughts or actions are coming from ego. Are even the goals, are your goals coming from ego? Do you want to be successful because you want to show something or prove something to the world? Or does it truly give you joy? Do you want to climb the corporate ladder because you want to be perceived as something? Or are you really passionate about serving the corporation? These are some questions you need to ask yourself. So any thought that comes from fear, comparison, or insecurity is nothing but ego. Any goal that is coming from comparison, insecurity, or superiority to feel superior. It is nothing but coming from ego. And the next close step to get closer to your authentic self is to heal your inner child. The inner child holds the key to reconnecting with authenticity. It addresses the wounds, address those wounds, reparent yourself, and you will see your true self emerge. This is what happened in my case. A person who was always trying to prove something with, external success or academic records or whatnot. Now I'm least bothered because I got reconnected to my inner child. My true inner child, my true authentic self lies in creativity. I just create for the sake of creating. Again, I don't want to gain some name, fame, being an artist or a writer. It comes very natural to me. Speaking comes naturally to me. That's why I started teaching. It's something that no one in my circle does. So I'm not seeking any external validation. This is what gives me joy. I have to teach what I learn. This is where my purpose lies, my passion lies. So I started pursuing it. And I cannot explain the amount of joy that I get doing these sessions, sharing what I learned, what I discovered. And I keep trying to research and come up with more ways to make it more easy to understand, especially about ego, because I'm truly passionate about it and I do not care how it is being perceived by people who know me or who do not know me. So you can clearly tell when someone is very authentic, when you see they're operating very authentically in this world, and someone who is just trying to, they have a facade or trying to put up with something, both in the spiritual and material world. So healing inner child is very important. There are a number of workshops, number of meditations, number of practices that can help you heal the inner child. I would highly recommend you to attend any inner child workshops that you come across because they're really valuable. And the core is to practice, to keep practicing that awareness of observing the ego, practicing those, noticing those thoughts, emotions, and always it comes down to mindfulness. Where how do we practice that muscle? Again, meditation, by practicing stillness, always coming back to the breath. Practicing stillness means you're not attaching yourself to that thought, you're not attaching yourself to that emotion, you're just observing. Ego's illusion vanishes when we observe. The authentic self is beyond thought. It is found in silence, presence, and a deep inner knowing. Okay, an example for ego versus authentic self. Example, someone is receiving criticism at work. Ego's reaction will be, how dare they question me? Thoughts like these. I need to defend myself or have to prove them wrong. Something like these. We get defended. We take it personally. We become insecure because our image gets damaged, right? Because I have this image of a perfect performer, perfect at job, and somebody's criticizing me. I cannot take it because that's my ego got hurt. What is an authentic self reaction in this situation? They take the feedback, they question, is there truth in this feedback? If there is truth, use that feedback to grow, to change, to improve. If there is no truth, that is their perception, whoever has given you the feedback, because that person is running on their ego, on their conditioning, on their image of themselves or their employees. What is your thing to take personally? There is no point in taking anything personally. So that's totally okay. So you're calm, very open, you're centered in your self-worth. Your worth or value is not hit. It's not dependent on that person's opinion of yourself. Another example, social media is is I don't know if it's a boon or a bane in current situations, current times, but a ego reaction, comparing yourself to someone you see on social media, ego reaction would be, they are more successful than me, or their husband is more lovable, they have a happy relationship, they have happy kids. I need to work harder so that I don't feel like I'm falling behind. As I said, we all have that. That's the ego pattern. This is fear-based ego pattern. They're seeking external validation. How would you react if you are connected to your authentic self? Their path is different from mine. When you're connected to your authentic self, there won't be a point where you will even compare yourself with others. There is no point of comparison because everybody has their own authentic self and everybody has their own individual paths. Everybody has their own journey where everybody is struggling, everybody is drowning in these ego patterns. So, what is the point? We've been conditioned to believe that everybody has to get study these and get these ranks and have a follow a pattern of schooling, college, job, marriage, kids, retirement, vacations, old age. That is a pattern. If you think that pattern is only life, you cannot find your authentic self. You cannot experience true liberation. You cannot experience what true enlightenment is. You have to think beyond it. Ask your own self. Your own inner voice has all the answers. So, authentic self reaction in this social media comparison example is their path is different from mine. I am on my own journey. I trust my timing. Okay, they may be having a happy relationship. Maybe I'm not married at this point of time, but I trust my timing. It will happen when it has to happen. Even if it does not happen, it's all right because that is for my ultimate good. We all come here with our soul plan, and it's all part of the plan. It's all working out every single time. That assurance, that acceptance, that beauty of understanding your own soul and your soul path gives lot of inner peace. There is no point and no necessity of even comparing with another's spiritual journey also. We are all at our different own soul level. We are at our own soul journey. So just because some meditator is sharing experiences, you don't need to aim for those experiences. It's okay that they are on their journey. I'm on my journey. So that assurance should be there for when you will have that assurance when you are connected to your authentic self. Okay, one last, I know we are over time, but one last, I couldn't cover this from a Bhagavad Gita perspective. Anybody in the chat, tell me what Bhagavad Gita is in one line. Like, who is Krishna and who is Arjuna? Who are they? We all know Bhagavad Gita and we know its importance. It's nothing but today's topic. Bhagavad
Yeah,
Gita is
Arjuna
nothing
is
but
ego.
it's
Arjuna is
dialogue. Yes, Balami.
Arjuna is ego self, and Krishna is our higher self.
Very true. Very true. So that's exactly what Bhagavad Gita is. It's a conversation between our ego self and our higher or authentic self or the soul. So Arjuna is nothing but the ego self of ourselves who's asking all these questions. He's confused. He's in a fearful situation. He's worried about how his image would be damaged if he loses this war, if he does not perform. If the suffering that he is having, he has all this suffering that is ego, and he asks these questions to his inner self, to Krishna, the ultimate consciousness that is within all of us, right? So it's a beautiful scripture. It has the answer to every ego pattern. For example, in Hinduism we call ego as ahankara, right? And its connection to inner child wounds is a small example. Uh, So, Ahankara falsely claims ownership of experiences and emotions, and we create these identities based on pain. So, inner child wounds feed this illusion, making us believe that we are our suffering. We believe that we are that suffering. Our life is miserable because we create an identity even to that suffering. We cling on to that suffering, right? So, self awareness is what dissolves this. It is the beginning of the dissolution of the ego. To just throw the light on that pattern is enough. So there are three gunas, right? There are three gunas, and I'll tell you the relation between ego's reaction to those wounds and the three gunas. So Krishna explains that the ego operates under the influence of three gunas, modes of nature. We know the gunas, right? Tamas, which is ignorance and darkness. So in this case, ego acts like a wounded victim. So inner child wounds lead to self-pity, blame, avoidance. All these are tamas, ignorance, darkness. Example, I was abandoned, so I'm unworthy of love. This is a belief of tamas. Next one is rajas, that is passion, attachment to goals and results. We have goals, that is fine, but we also want to control the outcome. That is where the problem arises. Attachment, ego as the overcompensator here. So these wounds create perfectionism, people pleasing, control. Example, I must succeed. I want it to come, because I worked hard, I want it to come to me a certain way. We always want to even control the way outcomes come to us. Okay, so all these are examples of rajas. Next one is a sattva, purity and awareness. This is where self-awareness comes. You witness ego. You are observing ego as a witness. Purity and awareness, sattva guna. So healing begins when we observe the ego without identifying with it. Today I've had an entire day filled with ego patterns, but I was just observing them. I was noticing them. I see my fear of rejection, but it does not define me. I have that core understanding that it does not define me. Okay, I am still working on rewiring my beliefs and thought patterns and all of that. But the observation part is something that has slowly become my second nature with practice, with persistent mindful practice outside of meditation. True benefits of meditation can be seen when your life becomes, your nature becomes meditative. You should operate as you're doing meditation, every single interaction, every single moment. Even if we don't, it's okay. We do not judge ourselves. We observe. That's the key. That's the first step. So Krishna advises that moving towards the sattva guna, that is awareness, is what leads to self-liberation. This entire series I wanted to do because of this. Self-awareness is like the ultimate thing. It is key. We do meditation to develop this self-awareness. That understanding should be there. That whole point of meditation is not just to relax ourselves, but also to develop this self-awareness so that we can move beyond the suffering, the human suffering. So even Krishna teaches that you have the right to perform your duty. This is where, the rajas, guna that I said, we perform our duty, we work hard, but we also feel entitled for the results. We want the outcome. We have an attachment to the outcome. I have this, I'm working on it. So because I work hard, I expect something, a result or some appreciation, validation. We're seeking again validation, right? So Krishna says, that is our true self, authentic self, our higher self says, perform your duty, do your dharma, do the best you can, but you are not entitled to the fruits of that action. If it comes, accept it. Even if it does not come, accept it. Because there's a lot of play. There's karma is also a part of this play. It's part of the picture, right? So this means that the ego clings to outcomes. We want that validation, approval, control. So healing happens when we act from authenticity, when we do our best, when we follow our dharma, when we do our dharma, and not from those wounded expectations, not from that inner child wounds, and just doing our dharma without any expectations. కష్టపడు ఫలితం ఆశించకు. This is what it is. ఫలితం వచ్చినా రాకపోయినా ఒకటే, doesn't matter. As long as we are aligned and operating from our authentic self. So that's all I had for today. Sorry, I'm going over. I have a lot more to share, maybe some other time in some other session. But I hope you got a basic understanding, a little more in-depth understanding of ego and the anatomy of ego, and how understanding and building awareness, that is the only way for anything. Even if you want to lose weight, you need to first build awareness where your how your food habits are, rather than straight away getting into some fancy diets and starving yourself. So self awareness is the key to everything. Thank you so much. We can ask